Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. We are going to jump right into the Back to Basics makeup series that I've been doing for the last couple of weeks here on my channel, with the exception of last week because I did do a foundation review for you guys on this foundation. However, I gave you a hint that today's video was going to be using this foundation, so that's exactly what we're going to be doing. I'm going to teach you guys a couple different ways that you can apply your foundation with different tools, and then of course we're going to be talking about ways to conceal your face, as well as the tools that you can use to do that. And then I actually am going to show you guys all these different powders that you can set your face with, or setting options really that you can set your face with, and talk about why those powders work, what their uses are for, and actually which ones are best at the proper time for your face. So if you are new to my channel, I want to welcome you, and I would love for you to consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so that you can get alerted whenever I upload new videos, which is actually every single Friday. As always, I'll link the products below so that you guys can see exactly what I used for my video. And if you want to know how to do all the stuff that the pros do, then you're going to want to keep watching. Okay, so let's jump right in. I do want to go ahead and make a note to let you guys know that normally what I do before I put on foundation is I wash my face, moisturize it, let that sit for a bit. So it's like the first thing I do when I get out of bed in the morning, besides putting in my contacts and all that good stuff. And then I will put on my primer about 5 or so minutes. Well, actually no, I'll put on my primer first and let that sit while I'm doing my eye makeup. But it is Sunday evening and I decided to film this tonight. So I had makeup on all day and I just stripped my foundation and all of that stuff off with like a Burt's Bees wipe, a makeup remover wipe, and I'm actually doing this foundation for you on a not so perfectly prepped face. So I want to just put a reminder out there that if you are wanting your foundation to look its best, the only way that it's going to do that is if you have prepped your skin properly. So as you've heard it probably said before, if you watch other beauty girls or guys on YouTube, that you are only gonna have as good of a finish as the skin prepped underneath. So it's really important to remember that, and I just want to at least throw that out there to you guys, that I'm not coming to you today with my normal prepped skin that's like perfectly ready for makeup. So okay, so last week's video, you guys know, if you watched, if not, I'll link it above for you. I did a review on the MAC Pro Longwear Nourishing Waterproof Foundation and talked about why I think this foundation is so wonderful. And I promised you guys that in this week's Back to Basics makeup series video that I would use this foundation to show you the techniques that I want to show you today with the tools that I want to use today. And so that is exactly what we're going to do. So much like my contour video, we're gonna like split half of my face and apply one half with a brush and then the other half with a sponge, so that you can kind of see the difference in an application that is done with either. Now what I want to say is that just because you use a brush, or if you're like used to using a brush, doesn't mean that a sponge is necessarily better for you, and then the opposite of that is true. What it really depends on is how you like your makeup, and then sometimes, to be honest with you, some foundations just look better if they're applied with a brush, or some look better if they're applied with a sponge. And so I kind of go back and forth, which is why you see me use both in my videos. Right now I've been on like this huge sponge kick, but then like a couple of days ago I used a brush and really liked it, and I couldn't tell you what foundation it was. I use so many all the time. Sometimes I really forget what I do from a day-to-day basis, which is just funny. But today you're gonna actually get to see me do that with both. I'm gonna put my foundation on my palette per usual. And this foundation is, well, first of all, it's pretty creamy. I will say that typically your sponge is gonna eat up a little bit more of your foundation, so I'm gonna use the brush first and get that side done. So we'll go brush on the right side of my face and then sponge on the left. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'll just dip my brush in like so. Oh, and let me tell you guys, I just washed my brushes and sponges like 20 minutes ago before I set up to film. So this brush is wet. Normally you don't want to do that. Now your sponges you do want to dampen. They actually work best when they're damp. But I will say that if you are not liking the way your foundation is looking, it might be because your tools aren't clean, so you might need to clean your tools. However, this will be interesting to have a wet brush. That's not, you know, I usually don't do that. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. And so I'm gonna actually start with my foundation, and we're going to keep it in the center of my face. So where you put your brush down with your product is going to be where the most product is actually put onto your face. So I always start in the center. The last thing you want to do is have a lot of product kind of trying to work into your hairline. That's really tough. So most of your product is good to actually put on the center of your face and then work it out. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm just going to use these stippling motions to put the product on. And I actually like to, some girls don't like to put foundation underneath their eyes, but I do. I actually feel like that gives me a good base to put my concealer. So I will do that. And then I'm gonna try to work around my eyebrows, because that I did not take off. Obviously I left my eye makeup still on. So, and I just like stipple this on, and sometimes I'll like, I don't want to say rub or pull, but I will kind of drag the brush a little bit depending, but for the most part I'm really trying to press this into my skin as much as possible, because that really gives you a nice clean and pretty finish, and I like the way that that looks, especially if you have textured skin, which I do. So let's go up into the forehead. Same here. I'm gonna need a little bit more. So, okay. So we'll go ahead and throw some right in the center here. I say that like we're just throwing it on. Not what we're doing. And this is why you don't want to have so much too. Like I like to work from the center of my face out, because it is, as you can see, it's tough to get up into that hairline without looking streaky. And a lot of times I will have foundation pretty much in my hairline, which can sometimes look gray. Even though it's not, just because I get a little bit lazy with following the rules for this. Sometimes I'm just straight up in a hurry. That is the brush side. So now we'll do, there we go. Now we'll do the sponge side, and I was gonna try to like leave my nose a little bit more clear, but I didn't do that. So we'll see how that goes on my nose. Okay, so I'm gonna just do the same thing, put a little bit of product on. You can use the back of your hand, guys. I just don't like to do that because I'll get makeup stains on my hands. I had that for years. It's like it didn't come off. Okay, so we'll just dip your sponge like so, and you can see it eats up pretty much whatever's on there. Same concept, stay in the center of your face, work your way out. And get your hair out of your face too. And for this product, or for this actual tool, you're going to push this, it's like called pouncing, into that type of motion. You might even be able to hear it, I'm not sure, but it's pressing into the skin same way as the brush does. So I think what I have found too with using a sponge versus a brush, I feel like the brush actually will put on a little bit more of a fuller coverage at first, where like a sponge doesn't do that. You almost have to build up your color with a sponge. So for those of you who don't like to wear a full coverage foundation, or if you have like a fuller coverage foundation, which this definitely is, you can have a more medium coverage foundation, or a more sheer foundation by using a sponge, because it doesn't put down as much product as what a brush does. So I'm not sure if that looks any different to you guys in the camera here, but for me, I can see that this side is a little bit more full coverage than this side. So I can still see, like I've got a couple of zits right now and I can still see them down here. And even up here on my forehead, I can see that it just didn't cover as well. So if I wanted a fuller coverage, I would obviously have to add to this a little bit. I find that sometimes it takes me a little bit longer to apply with a sponge versus using a brush, because I can be a little bit more haphazard about this application. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is go and contour my face, and then I will come back to you guys once that's done, and we'll actually do the concealing part. And I'll show you all those areas that you can conceal and the cool stuff you can do with that. So I will be right back. All right, you guys, I've got my contour on, so I'm gonna jump right into the actual concealing part. There's a couple of different places that I conceal every time I do this, and then there's a couple of places that I tend to add depending on the makeup look or just what I'm feeling for the day. Those areas are not necessarily like a right or wrong thing. Again, a lot of well, actually, let's just say this. Most of what you do in makeup really is gonna be about preference and what you like for you. So what I'm trying to do is just show you guys a bunch of different things that you can do, and then you can kind of experiment on your own skin and see what you like. So let's jump right into the concealing part, and I'm going to use my Revlon Color Stay Concealer. This is a really light concealer, and I like that vibrant, bright, almost like a highlighty look with my concealer. So you don't have to go as light as what I do, but you can. I have a couple of other ones that aren't near as like bright as that one, and this is one you guys see me use all the time too, the Fit Me. And I have several other ones, some that are actually the color of my skin. But for the sake of this today, I'm gonna show you guys what it looks like in a very fair concealer. So let's start. The one place I always do that will never change is going to be underneath the eyes, and I will go ahead and put the concealer under both eyes and then show you how I do it via brush or via sponge. And I don't need that much, but oh well. Okay, so I have a couple of different brushes that I use for concealer. Both are Sigma brushes, and again, same thing. I literally just cleaned them. I mean, these are super damp. So hopefully they still apply pretty well. So I have my Precision Tapered that I use, and then I have, this one really is my favorite. It's the Precision Flat Angled from Sigma, and I love this one because of the angle, and it just feels like it gets up in the creases of my eyes to push that product into my skin a lot better than this one, or even like your old-fashioned like concealer brushes. Don't really like these too much, other than cleaning up in places when you make mistakes. So let's jump right in with this one. So what I do is I go back in the same way that I did with foundation, and I will just push this product right into my skin, stipple it on. And I like to take my concealer underneath my eyes, basically where my eyebrows end, all the way into the hairline almost, to give a nice highlighty look. Now, the one thing I will say about a brush is it is difficult to get into like that corner part of your eye and push that concealer down. So if you feel like it's not working as well, then if you have a brush, you can take one of these brushes and use that. Typically what I do though is use a sponge. So I will show you on the other eye. But this stippling actually works nicely because instead of like rubbing and dragging, you're pushing this into your skin, which gives you a really nice, pretty finish. And that's another reason I like to use this technique here. If you drag your brush too much, you're gonna get more of like a streaky look, a lined look. And I will also, as you can see, use my fingers to pat sometimes into the skin. Ooh, this looks so pretty tonight. Okay, so now I'll go to the other side, and I'm just gonna take my this is a beauty blender, but again, you don't have to have those. All the ones that I use are different. This came in a Sephora Play box, which I think I said 100 times. It is damp. Dampen your sponges. If you don't dampen them, they're not gonna work right. So it's clean, and it is obviously damp, so I'm gonna go ahead and push this in as well. So I love using the point for this like part in my inner corner of my eye because it works really nicely. Same thing here. I will pull it, get my hair in it, story of my life. I will pull it all the way into my hairline. Okay, so the only thing about the sponge, this is why sometimes I use both, is that I feel like it pulls product away from the eye, like it kind of soaks up and doesn't push it in as well. And I feel like that brush just displaced the product so well that I don't even need to like fix anything on that. Here, I still feel like it can see like part of it, like my circle, like dark circles that I have. So sometimes what I have to do is go back in after it sits for just a second and add in just a small little dot or two more. Just, it's always on that particular area right there. So I'm gonna do that. Okay, and that's my eyes. So that is the one place that I always do. Now I'll show you the other places. So one of my favorite places that I have been doing recently, and this is kind of one of those things, I don't know if I'll stop doing this either because I really love the way that it looks, is actually taking a line right underneath your contour. Same on the other side. And then the other places that I do sometimes, but not all the time, are gonna be the chin, the nose, and then the forehead. The forehead really just depends on humidity for me, or if my skin's looking dry. I can tend to get dry up here. I won't do that. I don't want to bring attention to it. So that's something that's personal for me with the forehead. Okay, so we'll start with the brush side first. And you know what? You can do a couple different things here. You can use your tiny brush, like so, which is gonna take forever, or you can take your foundation brush, and that goes so much faster, which I love. And again, stipple, 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 and that just pushes that into the skin so nicely. We'll use a brush for here too. I think the sponge sometimes kind of pulls like at my chin and pulls product off of my chin, so a lot of times I'll use a brush for this. All right, and now sponge time over here. I do love this little tiny sponge for this stuff because it just works so, so well to get in there and get the job done. Okay, cool. Nose, I'll use a sponge for, just so you guys can kind of see. Again, we're just pushing right into the skin, getting a nice, pretty finish. And then for the forehead, let's try to do this two ways. I'll try on this side to use the sponge. There we go. And then on the other side, let's try the brush. See, and I like the sponge a little bit better for that. I feel like the brush sometimes can accent texture when I'm doing this. So see what I mean? It's just really, it's preference. It's totally preference. There's no wrong way. It's really just about kind of what you like for your skin and the finish. Oh, I got my eyebrow. Dang. Oh well, it happens. It's just gonna have to be like that now. Okay, so those are the ways that I conceal. And so the last part of this that I wanted to talk to you guys about today is, oh my gosh, holy cow, how many different options do you have to freaking like set your face, and why are there so many options? So I'm going to show you that. You do need to set your face. First of all, if you're wearing concealer, especially underneath your eyes, I don't care how young you are, you have little tiny little wrinkles on your skin from smiling and living life, and they're there for that for a reason. But you do want to set your concealer because otherwise it's going to crease on you, and that is like not a fun look. So I'm going to show you how I do that. Now, as mentioned in other videos, I do not bake. Baking does not work for me. It does not look good on my skin. I don't know, I don't like it. So I will show you how I actually set my concealer. I'm going to use the L'Oreal Pro Powder, the High Definition Setting Powder in Banana, and I'll just put some on the lid. And this is just a setting powder. So I'm going to talk about the differences in a minute, but this is one that I always go to. This is like a staple for me. So I will just put some powder on a little brush and dab it on, wipe it off, just to set my eyes. You can, you know what, you can do this with a sponge, and I think I just did the other side with a brush. Let's try the other side with a sponge. I don't even know if I've done that before. Oh yeah, I have. Ooh, that looks nice. Okay, so I totally just swapped sides on you guys by accident, but that's okay. So over here we did sponge and over here we did brush. And then that is something that I always do. Hands down, you need to do it for sure. The other thing that I really like to use sometimes is a pressed powder, and this is It Cosmetics Bye Bye Pores. And this actually, a pressed powder is really good for kind of reducing the look of pores. It gives you a more airbrushed look. It really mattifies a cream or a liquid foundation, which is exactly what I use today. So I will show you how I do that, and I'm pretty sure I have used a brush for this too. I just don't know which. Actually, it's this one. Okay, so I'll show you on this side with a brush. So I've got to get a big, an actual bigger one of this because I'm out of the, pretty much this is a sample that I had. And with this one, I only like to do certain areas of my face just because of, again, pressed powders can look, they can make you look really, really dry or matte sometimes, and that can actually give you an aged effect, which may not be what you're going for. Typically, I know that's not what most people are going for. So I try to stick to the centers of my face with this. So I'll show you what I mean. Oh wait, I need to put blush on. Hold that thought. Okay, so now I'm actually gonna go put the pressed powder on, and I just, again, push this right onto my face. And again, stay in the center. So that is a pressed powder, and I love that because what it does is it really hides like the texture and the pores that I still kind of have right here. And I don't know if you guys can see that on camera, but I do have that, and I can see them a lot more on this side of my face. So that is typically why I'll use a pressed powder there. And then you can take this setting powder, which will pretty much just prolong the wear of your makeup, but it doesn't do much for the pore reduction or mattifying of that. But I'll show you that if you do this on this side, that's kind of, it gives you a different look. And again, at this side, I just can't see as much of the pores that I have as I can on this side, which is why I like to do a pressed powder. And you can, wrong sponge, you can apply that with a sponge, but it's gonna pretty much give you the same effect. And the last setting powder that I have for you guys, well, it's not a setting powder, this is actually a finishing powder that I have dropped on the floor in here and broken several times, so it's a mess. But a finishing powder will blur fine lines, and it will, it's really good for like if you're gonna be in photographs. It's a great way to make sure that you've got a nice, pretty, not like a shiny face, that kind of thing inside of a photograph. But the thing is that you don't want to like layer on all these products and wear them all the time. So I would say that if you're going to be in a lot of photographs, you might want to use a finishing powder versus these other ones. So I'm going to show you what it looks like, but it's going to look really mattifying. So I'll probably just show you on this side, and you can see how broken that is. So I'll just lightly touch my brush there and dab that on. And this is kind of where, this is why I don't do this all the time, because what this does is it really mattifies, and I feel like it brings out the texture in my face, which I don't love. So I tend to stay away from these finishing powders because of that. Or it's really more of the layering. Like I don't want to layer it. I can use this by itself, but I don't want to layer it. So let's do this. Let's put on, and actually you guys might even be able to see it more once I put on, let's put on a highlighter. So I'll throw on this highlight on my cheeks, and I feel like all I can see here are pores because of that finishing powder. And on this side looks really, really pretty, and it looks smooth, and I don't notice that texture in my face. So that's why I kind of like a pressed powder for that. Because sometimes even when I do this, a highlighter can actually bring out that texture, and I don't love that either. So you can see that, or at least I can see that, hopefully you can, that this is a little bit smoother on this side than that side. And then last but not least, the last product I want to show you guys is going to be your setting spray. That is an option for you too. So this is also a staple. I always use a setting spray. Even when I'm using these powders, I just always finish it off with a setting spray. But I'm going to show you a little tip and a trick tonight that is actually pretty beneficial. I don't know if everybody does this, but some people might know about this, and if you do, awesome. If it's something that you haven't tried before, definitely give it a try and see what you think. Okay, so let me go ahead and spray my face with my setting spray, and I'm using Kat Von D's Locket. So here is the extra tip for you guys to try if you have not tried it. If you will let your setting spray start to dry just a little bit, wait until it gets to where, I mean, obviously my face looks soaked right now. Give it like, I don't know, a minute, 30 seconds, maybe a little longer. My forehead tends to take a little bit longer to dry than my cheeks. But what you're gonna do is take your sponge and use an end that you haven't used. So it can, obviously it's still damp, but use an end that you haven't used. And then what you wanna do is push right into your face. And this actually gives you such a pretty finish when you're done. I absolutely love this. I've been doing this recently, and first of all, it looks so good on this side because I don't have that finishing powder on, but my skin looks super smooth and soft over here. That's what we're going for. So same thing on the forehead. You definitely want to wait for it to dry a little bit because I obviously am going a little quick on the forehead because it will pull up the foundation if you don't let it dry enough. So make sure that it's kind of like almost tacky and almost dry, but you're just gonna push your makeup into your skin. And there you go. That is it with that. So I've taught you a little bit about setting sprays and setting powders, and then of course your foundations and your concealers. I hope that you guys learned something. I would love to know what you guys are doing if you do some of this, and let me know like how you're liking it. If there's something I didn't talk about here that maybe works really well for you, would love to know about it. And of course, give this video a thumbs up if you liked what you saw. If you're going to recreate some of these looks, go ahead and tag me on social media. You can find me on Instagram right here, and I would love to see exactly what you create. So for now, I will see you guys next time in my next video.